Now, I spoke at the top of the program about the future of the coalition. You can always go back and watch these editorials on YouTube or the Sky News website if you missed them. But I was talking about the future of the coalition and about the right of centre politics in Australia generally. Just a little topic, really, for a Monday night, isn't it? But it was prompted by the reception that former Senator Nick Minchin got when he spoke at the CPAC, or Conservative Conference in Sydney, on the weekend. And he dared to say that Conservatives should get involved in the Liberal Party and engage with it and stick to its values and make sure that they get more Conservatives into the right positions. Have a listen to what happened.
To be frank, I don't know that the Liberal Party needs a whole lot of changing. It has profound... Oh, go on. I thought... Hey, calm down, will you?
I thought we were a Conservative gathering.
You're worse than a socialist audience. Give me a chance to speak.
I feel like I found myself on the set of Q&A.
Exactly, the Q&A of the right. Hey, now, many people there didn't want to hear this. They prefer to just throw barbs from outside the coalition parties, which means, of course, a fracturing of the Conservative vote to the minor parties on the right. And that's what's done a lot of damage. It also means it leaves the party dominated. Those who are left behind are dominated by the wets or the moderates or the Green left within the Liberal Party, the Matt Keans of this world, which means, of course, it stays out of government in the end. Let me now take these issues up with the Nationals' Senate leader, Bridget McKenzie. Thanks for joining us, Bridget. Obviously, you'd agree with Nick Minchin, wouldn't you? Whether it's the Liberal Party or the National Party, Conservatives ought to get involved and make sure they pre-select the right people rather than having these breakaway parties and just sort of throwing barbs at the Libs.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a great believer you've got to be inside, making a difference and doing your best to ensure that the values and principles that you espouse, and as Conservatives, they're all quite clear, that you're making a difference in your political party to make that happen. Obviously, with the National Party, we're very clear on our values, principles of democracy, Judeo-Christian values, our need to, defend our nation, protect our nation, and principles of egalitarianism that, no matter where you live, you should be actually able to enjoy in the prosperity of our nation. So we stand up for those.
Yeah, the Nationals have done better.
Everyone's very clear on who we are.
Yeah, sure. And the Nationals have done better in recent years, but you achieved nothing except in coalition. And I'm guessing you would agree that the coalition has done itself a lot of damage by signing up to net zero by 2050, for instance, and that removed a point of difference at the last election. What about pandemic management? Do you accept that the coalition went against Conservative values in pandemic management?
Well, Chris, I just want to take you up on the climate change question. I mean, everyone talks about the National Party being the dinosaurs on climate. We didn't drink the climate Kool-Aid on the basis of science. We signed up around impact, and for a long time no one was prepared to actually have a rational conversation about who would actually ultimately end up paying for our increased ambition on climate change. So we're going to hold the line on that going forward as well and stand up for the communities that sent us. But in terms of COVID-19 and the pandemic response, I mean, I look at our government's support for our economy and for our health outcomes. But at the end of the day, Chris, and you and your viewers know this, it was state premiers that ended up ruling the roost because they had the power to do so. And effectively, the federal government didn't necessarily have any levers at its disposal to do what people expected it to do. And that's, I think that needs to be a conversation we have around how our federation works at times of crisis.
It did stop, the federal government did stop Australians overseas from coming home, which is something we still have to pinch ourselves to understand that happened. And just sort of flowing on from that, I suppose, as a segue, what's your view of this decision now to bring home 20 adults and 37 children from Syria, the offspring and partners of former ISIS terrorists?
Look, I share the concerns raised this morning when this was being discussed in the media. When we repatriate women, adults and children who have been closely associated with the ISIS terrorist organisation, oftentimes for years and years and years, absolutely these will be radicalised women in the main and obviously young children. And we need to make sure that our nation's security is first and foremost at the front of the government's mind. So if the government's made the decision to repatriate these Australians, well, then I want to make sure the control orders are significant enough to make sure that we can genuinely be assured that they pose no threat to the broader Australian community. And I assume that the government is acting on the advice of our intelligence agencies if this is going to be their decision.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for joining us, Senator. I appreciate it.
Always, Chris.
Senator Bridget McKenzie there joining us from Melbourne.